Today is going to be a different kind of video. I felt completely out of control. There was a point where I was like, this isn't normal. It didn't feel good. I knew it wasn't healthy. This has been the number one thing that has changed my life. You don't have to be perfect every single day. You just have to keep consistently showing up.
It's game time and I'm up one. Name something I ain't done. Name a body that's my type. Air Jordan, I'll take flight. I'm next level, I'm franchise.
To our winner, Julia Renee.
Hello, my loves, and welcome back to another video. Today is going to be a different kind of video. This is something that I've been wanting to do for quite some time now, and I have made videos about this in the past, but it's been years since I have, and I get so many questions about it, and I thought it was definitely necessary. So before I get into everything, I want to put a big trigger warning at the beginning of this video because we are talking about eating disorders, and I know from personal experience that when you're going through your healing journey, sometimes it can be very triggering to hear somebody talk about theirs, eat regardless of how it's going or not. So I want to be very sensitive to people that might be also going through it as well. But I really wanted to make this video for that person out there that is also struggling and maybe hasn't told anybody yet, or maybe has these thoughts or feelings and doesn't really know what it is or what to do with it. So I really want to start with where this all happened and my healing journey with food. And for me, I only realized this once I started getting help, but if you guys know my story, you know that at the age of 15, I was a wrestler from 15 to 18, and I was pretty good at it. I was pretty good. So one thing about being a wrestler, especially in high school, is that you have to cut weight in order to be in a certain weight class. So around that time, I was like around the 119 weight class, and I would cut weight to be like the 110 weight class. And we did it in the most unhealthy ways because nobody was teaching us how to properly diet for competition. And look, I'm just a 15-year-old. I'm the only girl on the team. I'm just listening to what the other guys are doing and, following along, and didn't think anything of it. And I'm talking about like spitting in water bottles, and because if you fill up a water bottle with spit, you lose a pound. Like, isn't that crazy? Wrapping myself in like cellophane and then running outside in the Texas heat with sweats on, and literally I would sit there at lunch and I just wouldn't have any food and my friends would be eating. So it was just weird ways of doing it, or just simply not eating at all. So little did I know that this would have an impact on me later. And this is where the restrict and binge cycle started after I started getting help and started realizing, oh my God, I have been competitively dieting since the age of 15. Like, not just dieting, but dieting to be competitive. Like, and I, kind of still do it. I still do it now. Not kind of, I do. But I ended up completing, doing something completely different, going into hair and makeup. I got some offers from colleges to wrestle in college, but it was never something that I wanted to take, that far. But what it would look like when I was cutting weight and stuff, and my mom could attest to that because she was there all the time, is I would just not eat. I super heavily restrict. And then as soon as I would weigh in, I would make weight, I would come back. My mom had all this food for me, and I just was like eating. So it was like a restrict and binge cycle that I didn't know that I was in at 15. And of course I was like starving and hungry. Also didn't have any water, was cutting water, stuff like that. So whenever I decided to quit my job at the salon and start my own business, become a bodybuilder, all of that stuff, it started to come back to the surface. And at that time, I didn't know what it was. So I decided to start prepping for my first show ever in 2019. 2019, I started prepping for my show, and I was planning to compete. I think the beginning of the year in 2020. So I was 3 weeks out from my first show ever, and I was so excited. I was looking good, and it was something that I had dreamed of doing, and we go into lockdown. I had literally gotten my extensions in. I was gonna have like these long orange extensions because I had like orange hair at the time, and then I was gonna do like fiery orange at the ends. And I get the call, and my mom is like, they're locking down, like, and I was so devastated. But what I remember is going to my parents' house right after that, and I didn't even think. I was just eating everything that they had in their pantry. And then we, as a group of friends, went to kind of like a sorry your show got canceled dinner for me. And I couldn't stop eating. And it was almost like, the way that I like to describe it, and if anybody has struggled with this, you can probably relate. It feels as if you are blacking out and you wake up and you're like, what happened? And I'll explain that feeling a little bit later. So we went into lockdown and everything, and I went from doing the most with training, extreme dieting, cardio, to not having a gym, having complete freedom with food, being in lockdown. Everybody was really struggling during that time, not being able to physically move your body as much, with being, locked at home, mentally being stuck in a home. And the gym is such a place where I go and I have that me time, and I felt completely out of control, where I didn't know what was going on. I just kept eating to the point where I would feel so sick. And there was a point where I was like, this isn't normal. Something is wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And then I remembered looking up what was happening with me, and I was like, what is this? Like, I feel like I can't control myself. And I want to read you guys the definition of having a binge eating disorder. And it's characterized by recurrent episodes of eating large quantities of food, often very quickly and to the point of discomfort. A feeling of loss of control during the binge, experiencing shame, distress, or guilt afterwards, and not regularly using unhealthy what can I say this word? Compensatory measures, i.e. purging, to counter the binge eating. So I was struggling with binge eating, bulimia, purging, all of that stuff. Whether it was punishing myself through doing excessive amounts of cardio and trying to fix what I had done, all of that jazz. And I don't want to go too deep into that because I want to be very mindful of people who are possibly watching. But I started getting help, because my thought was, I might have to give up bodybuilding because it doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. These two things don't go together. Somebody that's struggling this heavily with food, and you do a sport that is one of the most extreme versions of dieting. They didn't go together. But for me personally, and this is simply just my journey, and everyone's is going to be different. Some people might have said, I need to take time, not compete, not be a bodybuilder, all this stuff, and that's totally their journey. But for me, my thought was, the thought of having to give up this sport that I love so much, that has brought me so much, that thought scared me more than anything. That scared me more, to have to give up the thing that I love, that I had been working for, because of this. So since, I was in lockdown, and I was running my business and doing all my business was actually thriving, because so many people needed my services at that time, because there was no gyms. They needed an online coach. But I was struggling so heavily. And so, but I did have perfect and enough time to get the help that I needed and really start diving into this. And this is where I had realized, oh my God, I had been eating in this pattern, this restrict and binge pattern since I was 15. So of course, when I restrict for my bodybuilding competition, like this is going to come up. And I think the hardest part for me was, well, like, what do I do? Like, what would be the next steps going forward other than like getting help? Because I knew that I needed to actively try to do something different than what I was doing because it didn't feel good. I knew it wasn't healthy, and I wanted to continue doing this sport, but I knew that I needed to spend a lot of time doing internal work for me to rewire my brain. And one of the books, let me grab it. This has been the number one thing that has changed my life. I recommend it to anybody that messages me who struggles. It's Brain Over Binge by Katherine Hansen. And I felt I have notes in it. I've read it 5 times through, so many things. And what I love about it is that the first half of the book, she talks about her story. And I had never felt so seen, so heard, because I was sitting here feeling like there was something wrong with me, that I was broken, that I couldn't be fixed. And I didn't want to tell anybody because I was so embarrassed. Like, what? Like, you can't control yourself around food? And I'm like, it genuinely feels that way. So I felt so seen, and there were so many things in it that I was like, oh my God, I've done that, I do that. What is this? Like, and then the second half goes into the logical side of it, where she goes into how our brain works and neuroplasticity and rewiring our brain, and that we do have the ability to rewire our brain. And for me, when I read that second part, it broke it down so logically that the logic behind it helped me put it into action. Because first I felt seen, and I knew that I wasn't alone, that there was nothing wrong with me. I wasn't broken. I had just adopted very unhealthy habits at a very young age that were mapped in my subconscious, and I had just been acting in that same way over and over again. So that gave me some ease of knowing, okay, I can do something about this. I can get better. So and I won't tell you every single thing that's in the book, but I highly encourage you guys to get it. But the biggest part of it was describing how my brain worked. And from then on out, like I was so intrigued by how my brain worked and, all of that stuff. And it goes into talking about like the animal brain, the human brain, neuroplasticity. And the animal brain is like the oldest part of our brain, and this is the one that's just automatic and unthinking. The part of your brain that's like, I'm just gonna eat that entire bag of chips and I'm just gonna go for it. Maybe like think of it as like a little bit more like impulsive. I'm just gonna go do that thing. And then we have the human part of the brain, which is the newer, more developed part of our brain, which is in charge of decision making. So that's that moment where maybe you do want to eat that entire bag of chips, and you take that moment to have a level of self-awareness and say, oh, you know what? I'm already full. I'm already satisfied. I can stop and I can set this aside. And then neuroplasticity is our brain's ability to rewire itself. So the best way that I like to explain it that works for me in my brain and how I process information is, for example, say that you have a habit of snoozing your alarm, and you do it over and over and over again. And in our brain's job is to make our life a little bit easier. So if it starts recognizing a pattern, it's gonna start making it easier for us to follow through with that pattern. So I imagine it like this, like 2 wires that are trying to come together to make a solid habit. So say you snooze your alarm once, the wires get closer. You snooze your alarm twice, they get closer. 3 times, they get closer, they get closer. So we have these like neurons that are firing, and eventually they make a connection. And then you have this habit where now that's that feeling of like, my alarm goes off and I immediately just hit snooze, because you have now wired yourself to be somebody that hits snooze. So that was what I had done, you know, with food. It's like, I feel X, I'm going to eat. I feel Y, I'm going to eat. If I restrict or whatever for a competition, then I'm going to eat. So learning that was so helpful for me, because then I was like, okay, what's the next step? What are some practices and things that I can do to undo this wiring that has been there for years? Now, granted, you have to also consider that if you have been doing a specific pattern for, say, 5 years, and you're expecting yourself in a week to be like, well, it hasn't gone away. Girl, you've been doing it for 5 years. And for me, I was 15, and then I realized it, maybe I was 22, 23 when all this was going on. I'm 28 now. Like, it's a long time of you doing that same action to where it is so ingrained in you. So it's going to take a little time. It's going to take patience and intention with your relationship with food and how you respond to it. So I was getting the help that I needed. I was educating myself with reading, and now it was time to put it into action, because it's great to have the awareness and to get the help, but you actually need to practice it in real time. So these are some of the things that I still do to this day that help me with my relationship with food. And the first one, it is so simple, but it's being mindful when you're eating. Because a lot of the time when you struggle with binge eating, you don't even know what the food you're eating tastes like, smells like. You're eating so quickly. Sometimes you're like, whoa, how did I eat this much? Because you're going so unconscious around food. And you're not even giving your body the opportunity to say, hey, I'm satisfied, let's stop, because of the pace that you're going. So I was intentional with each meal, and man, it was hard sometimes because I had been so conditioned to eat a certain way, almost like at a very quick pace, that I had to slow down, maybe even push my plate away at times. I even sometimes I still do this, put my hand on my stomach, and I ask myself on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being I'm starving, which we don't want to be at, 10 being I'm stuffed, I'm uncomfortable, which we also don't want to be at. But I'd say like, okay, am I like a 5? Am I like a 6? So then when I started getting towards like the 8, 9, 10, then I'm like, okay, maybe we need to slow. And just being mindful in that kind of way. I also realized I was using food as a coping mechanism. If I was lonely, tired, stressed, anxious, I always turned to food. Now, it might feel like at times that food is going to be the solution to these problems, to these emotions. It might be a temporary release, but the problem that originated is still going to be there after. That stressful email you have to answer, you being lonely, it's still gonna be there, all of those things. So I needed to find other ways to cope with these emotions rather than turning to food, and actually address them head on. So if I was stressed, I can meditate, I can go do yoga, I can go on a walk with my dog. If I'm lonely, I can text a friend. I can go and I can plan a girl's day. Something that's actually conducive to the root emotion that I'm feeling, instead of always turning to food. Another thing that I started realizing I was doing was I was labeling foods as good and bad. And what I mean by this is that, say I saw chicken, broccoli, and rice, and I was like, that food is good. Therefore, I am a good person. I feel good about myself if I eat that. And say I saw like burgers, fries, and ice cream, I'd be like, that is bad food. And if I eat that, I am therefore a bad person. And I should feel bad about myself. So I stopped labeling foods as good or bad. And as I'm simply choosing a nutritious option, something that's going to feel really good on my stomach, something that's going to give me energy throughout the day. And there's going to be times where I do choose the fun foods, like I do choose like the burger, fries, and ice cream, but I don't need to label it as something that is bad, because I am allowed to have those things in moderation just like any other human is. I think this next one, which is learning to actually listen to your hunger cues, because whenever you struggle with binge eating, one thing that I noticed is that you start to confuse the feeling of being satisfied and being stuffed. So the way that I like to view it is there's 3 types of like feelings of hunger. There's I am starving, there's I'm satisfied, and then there's I am completely stuffed. Like, you know that feeling, guys, when you're like, oh, I ate too much, like it feels icky. We don't want to be there, and we also don't want to be starving. We want to be satisfied. The point of eating is to get to the point where I am no longer hungry and I am satisfied. But when you eat in excess for so long, it's almost like you only feel satisfied if you are completely stuffed and uncomfortable. And if you guys have ever struggled before, you're probably listening to this going like, oh my God, yes. So I needed to rewire that and know that I don't have to feel uncomfortably full and sick. I don't have to finish everything on my plate. I don't have to finish all the food that's in the chip bag in order to be satisfied. So I really had to be patient with myself, slow down. And when I was satisfied, I had to catch myself in that moment. And sometimes I sometimes I did it. Sometimes I didn't. And through this process, you're gonna have really good days where you're like, I feel great. Like I went so long without binging, it's great. And then maybe the next day you do. And I know for me, I'm like, oh, I feel like a failure. How am I ever gonna get better? That's going to happen, and that's okay. Because now you're actually doing something about it. You don't have to be perfect every single day. You just have to keep consistently showing up. You might fall down during this journey, but you get back up. You might fall down again, but you might get back. You have to get back up. And I just, over the years, just kept getting back up. Even when it felt like I'm never going to get better, I'm always gonna struggle with my relationship with food. These were words that I would say, and they're so strong, never, always. They carry so much weight, but I promise you this, that version of me there in 2020 did not think I'd be making this video today saying that it is possible. And of course, like, I still have moments during high stress things when I'm lonely, when I'm sad, when I'm anxious, or when I'm in my bodybuilding prep where some of these old patterns, they come up. And maybe it's just a thought that comes up, but now with all of the work that I have done and being intentional around food and being kind to myself, I can bat it off so easily. Whereas before, I have a thought to binge, I immediately go from thought to action. Now, sometimes I'll like, oh no, something stressful happened. I'm like, I need to binge. And then now I'm just like, I'm like, no, it's okay. And it can happen a lot quicker. So I really hope that me making this video helps somebody feel seen, and I hope that you know that you're not broken, that there's nothing wrong with you, because that's how I felt. And it can get better, and there's gonna be times where you fall down and you feel like you're messing up and you feel like you're always failing, but I promise you this, if you are intentional with the work that you do and being mindful with it and being also gentle on yourself if you do ever slip up, because beating yourself up more, like, it genuinely doesn't do anything. It genuinely doesn't help, but it is possible, I'm telling you. So I also want to link some resources down in the description if you're somebody that is struggling with this. I'll link the book. I'm also gonna link some past videos that I've made with actual practices that I like. Some of them I got from other places, and some of them I kind of like made up on my own as kind of like a, you know, silly way to make light of, you know, this whole thing. And one of them is called like the floor is lava, and it's just it's a practice where I'm just like sitting on the couch and I'm like, you pretend the floor is lava and you don't make an action until 5 minutes have gone by. And I have tons of like videos that I have made on this, and I want to link all of that down below for anybody that needs them, because what I had realized is that I had immediately been going from the thought to action. I would think I need to binge, and I immediately was there. I was doing the thing. I needed a pattern interruption in the middle. Whether that was, I'm going to journal, I'm going to go on a walk, I'm going to do some breath work, some meditation, I'm going to do the floor is lava technique. And having these practices in like my tool belt really helped me during these times when I did have the urge, and I could just pull them out and use them. And maybe one time one worked, one didn't, and I would just keep trying again and again. Also, if you have somebody in your life that you love so much and you know loves you, tell them. Tell them. You don't have to hide it. Get the help that you need, because the other side is amazing. And just know that I love you, you got this, and you are more powerful